best possible way.
Recording is on.
And doing it in a way that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay. So we ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on 2 seconds, John. I want to make sure that Chris can see it. Okay. All right, cool. Hey, Chris, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thanks. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Welcome to your very early day in Las Vegas. Hey, everyone. I'm Jasper with the ARF. Not the star of the show today. John Matthews, President of Marketing Evolution, is going to kick off this semester of the leadership level, which is focused on ad tech. And we'll be getting into all the kind of funky aspects of plumbing and viewability and all that kind of thing later on in the season. But right now, today, we're going to focus on what is arguably the grail for us all, is understanding whether something works, right? And this is a super fluid area right now. You've got the worlds of mixed modeling and single source and test control and attribution all fusing together at basically the same time when the platforms are coming together. TV is being redefined as online video in some ways. So it's this kind of in the crucible right now of attribution, measuring what works. Marketing Evolution was a partner of the ARS last year in our How Advertising Works project. Some really, really interesting work establishing ground truth on the relative impact of video versus banner. Basically, video is 2 times more effective from an ROI perspective. Relative effectiveness of mobile versus desktop, pretty much the same multiplier. Mobile is twice as effective as desktop. So really good work. John's got a whole bunch of slides here. He promises me he's going to read the room to craft the story today. So I want to hand over to our professor today, John Matthews, President of Marketing Evolution. Thanks.
Yay, how do they work and how best to leverage it? So this is all about discovering waste, right? Finding waste and rooting it out. Marketing Evolution, we talk about in our own organizations, enemy is waste in advertising. And so the other caveat, these are stock slides from Marketing Evolution, and if they appear to be sometimes a little bit salesy, forgive it. I'm not laying a sales job. I'm going to tell you how this stuff works. So why this, why now? A little bit about the industry and what's going on. Where's the money coming from? Like, why is this finding money? Methodologically, how does it work? The whole thing I'll be talking about today is person-level data. In the days of 1970s, the Apollo project was after single source and person-level data. We're finally arriving at the tactical reality of that future as it was laid out 40 years ago. This cannot be done unless it's done on a SaaS platform. I would just tell you that right now. No human brain can do this. Data visualization is required. The optimization analytics that have to run have to be done on engines, Garobi, et cetera, that necessitate a software layer. And I'm going to end with, what does this mean? Is your organization ready? So count how many ads you walk around. New York City is an intense place, but just walk down the street and see how many ads you get hit by on your phone, et cetera. We believe it's 5,000 per week that people live in surround sound of advertising, right? And each one of those is money spent, and each one of those ads came with an intent to move your brains and attitudes and behavior in some way, right? And in campaigns, that means what the marketing professionals are up against is this all worth it? If I get a good media buy, does that change my optimization? Is the message delivery to each person the right one, et cetera, et cetera. So what has changed? So what's the compelling competitive reality for marketers? There's no A's up there, automation. If I go through that, let me talk about 3 A's. The first one is real live addressability. All right. Many years ago when Marketing Evolution started and we were working with the Advertising Research Foundation, IAB, et cetera, we still relied on things like opportunity to see, right? A gazillion years ago, right? Things like offline, like television, et cetera. Today, set-top box data, red track data, et cetera, data is flowing into our system. I know the systems of our competitors. We know down soon to be what TV's on in a home, right now to 100 by 100 grid, right, of against who's in those homes, of commercials that they are seeing. Everybody has a mobile phone now, et cetera, et cetera. So the promise of one-to-one media exposure and recording that beyond digital, so-called digital, the world of log files, which we use as well, is upon us. The second one is really availability of big data. We believe that obviously first-party data sources coming from CRM systems, et cetera, are all there, but also third-party data sources is a real live industry right? And there's supermarkets increasingly of this data going on. Privacy is always an issue. We'll talk about that as we go along in this hour. But availability of the data is there, and the costs of that data acquisition are going down. Okay, so it used to be that huge companies, Fortune 50 companies, could afford this stuff. Not anymore. If you're spending $10 million a year or even less than that in advertising, it's affordable. And finally, automation on SaaS platforms. That's what's changed. The compelling thing that I want to get through to you all day today is that what attribution is doing now is, let me give an analogy. We're all marketers in the room. When you learned in Marketing 101 about segmentation, the reason for segmentation was to split the market by different response functions, right? High-value customers, low-value customers, how you could price differentially, whether you could coupon to them or not, whether it would be breakage. That's all differentiation in the marketplace for segmentation. The reason for segmentation is to make more money. Go with me on this analogy. The reason for splitting apart person-level information in an attribution system is to see for you what messages might work differently in what media channels versus you. And the segments that you represent, whether they're DMP segments or whether the segments that are proprietary to the individual marketer. So by untangling that, right, and knowing the differential response curves of those people against creative, against media, you're making more money. Advertising didn't do that well before, right? It's doing it now. So if you have personal message relevance, and the ability, the second thing I want to talk about today. So when I go through all these curves, these things that we call flirfs and surfs, et cetera, they are response functions that differ by people, by media type, down to a granular level, and by creative. That triangulation is where you're segmenting on the market, so to speak, in these tools to find money and serve them up the ads that matter. The second time is another ask. Who's just familiar with getting the output of mixed models, of time series, sort of, you gather the data for 5 years, it tells you what radio worked or not. Okay, all right. So the world that I grew up in marketing analytics, was a world of go into a company, gather 3 years of data based on GRPs and costs, line up that data by week for 5 years, put a regression model on top of it, and try to determine whether or not marketing had an impact. And at a lower level, sometimes you can get to TV, sometimes you can get to radio, whether or not individual channels were working or not for driving that historical sales information. That was the world still 10 years ago. And there's still many companies doing that. And mixed models have a lot of use around portfolio planning and long-range planning time in companies. Today, what's happening in more tactical campaign systems, right, in attribution, is real-time decisioning. Meaning, what's coming out of the software are answers on what you should move today, not merely in digital, but across all media channels. That has an implication. The implication is that organizations, agencies, vendors, marketers are really needing to adjust to this real-time decisioning future and possibility in what they do from a process perspective inside their organizations. Remember nothing today. Those are the two main things happening in attribution, right? Personal relevance and real-time decisioning. Okay, and I'll talk through it. This guy was a customer of ours, and he said to us that mixed model world of, I'm going to wait, and midpoint of next year, I'll find out whether the holiday campaign worked or not, is good as far as it went, but it isn't good when you need to, in his case, compete against a very strong competitor in the European market. So he drew a picture for us. We don't call it this anymore. He said, I need something for adaptive measurement. That inside the campaign, I want to push back to what's really going on in the marketplace and the marketing plan and adjust as we go. At the time, he used a sports analogy. I remember it forever. He said, pick your favorite sports team, whatever sport you like. Picture the coach not being able to call anything in-game. Nothing. Send the troops out there, go play whatever it is, soccer or American football or whatever. We're going to call some plays, 40 of them, you're going to run them. That's how advertising campaigns worked a decade ago. Fast forward to now, where sports analogy again, he gave it to us. Picture a future where you are adjusting the defense, you're calling the plays, you're looking what's working, what's not, you're doing a major halftime readjustment. That analogy kind of works for me. I hope it works for you. And he used it on us. He said, I need that. I need it at a detail level as well. That mixed modeling world of TV in general is working maybe better than radio in general, and print is somewhere in between in general. I would contend tells you very little or nothing about managing a campaign. What print? To who? What digital properties? When? To whom? And so he laid these out for us. Well, of course, this has a nice ending, right? This was 10 years ago. And that story appeared in Business Week a gazillion years ago, 10 years ago now, about marketing evolution. And it dawned on us that our future really, a greenfield future, was really not about mixed modeling per se, as was currently construed, but really about real-time adjustments in campaigns and person-level data, or that single source data. I ripped this off. If Jim Nail is out there somewhere, I'm sorry, Jim, from Forrester Research. Jim wrote a thought piece about a year ago, and he said, the world's changing. And I thought it was a good piece. And so you talk about the industry, I think this is what's going on, right? So before, either individually in silos or with mixed modeling, it was, how's media doing and should we throw more money at our agency or not next year's long-range plan? How did the campaign do and thinking about things going forward? Good, as far as it went. Really about long-range planning. You know, really, a lot of finance people buy mixed models, and they should, because it's a forecast system that's linked to sales based on historicals. That's good, and it's really good for this strategic budget allocation of this product versus that product, the Hispanic market versus not, and kind of high priests of users. Software never took off in this space because you had 2 users going on, 8 or 10 years ago. Today it's really different. Our customers will have 50, 60, 70 people in IDs in our software between the agencies, in regions, et cetera. They are getting in digital daily and other media now, we've moved this to weekly. To be able to have weekly pull-ups to say what's working and what isn't, and being able to, just like that in-game management, on-field management, what should be pivoted. And then finally, much more of a tactical system. Both of these things can exist at once and need each other, but much more of a tactical system. I'm going to skip this lecture point. So, if you're thinking about attribution and optimization on top of that, which is really an intelligence layer on top of all your data sources of software, I would humbly counsel you to look at these 7 things of where you're going in the future, of where these are going, of checking the box of whether or not an attribution system can do this. The first one is you can't really have just a few of the channels exposures, right? You can control for that, control exposed experiments. You can do that, right? But to have real attribution, you need to have the full media covered. Digital attribution was a start. It started there because it was measurable and it was fast. The data was available, so the philosophy could be applied. Digital attribution, problem is that you start adding up digital attribution, it over allocates impact to digital because it doesn't have everything else in the model, right? So TV exposures, outdoor exposures, which is getting more addressable today as well, radio exposures, coded up and probability of exposure, all has to be there. Creative and media marketing evolution has found that 2/3 of the impact against KPIs, pick it, intent to do something, sales, awareness building, is from, this is like so obvious, is from the message you see, not where you see it.
All of our data support that as well.
So all of this industry was mucking around on 1/3 of the problem for like 20 years, right? So, but what's great about addressable information, log file information, et cetera, is we have the creative. We know what somebody saw. The same thing with set-top box information, et cetera. In-flight course correction, I defended that. Person level and local. If you're a retailer, if you're a tire discounter in the Midwest, this is a customer of ours, 100 stores. To know that dads age 25 to 54 are 5 miles within a store or not, and what the subsegments are within that, and then how to advertise to them, is crucially important to maximizing sales. All right. The old stuff did it at the DMA level. DMAs are big. Right. So local, brand building and sales, not two separate things. Right? When we work with our customers and working on the brand advertising side, it always has a halo into sales and vice versa, right? And that optimization is incredibly important, right? So for researchers in the room, all right, I would say that two things, don't let go of. First of all, statistical inference is not dead. We'll get back to that later, all right? The second thing is that brand building efforts, the conversion to sales can be done if you're putting together a personal data set. And it should still be done with surveys, we would say. Go with me on that, okay? It still should be done by asking some people questions around whether or not their attitudes have shifted or not. Because the job of a marketer, we would contend, is really an upper funnel or lower funnel kind of job to bring people to the well to buy. And that means mind state shift. And the only way to do that without a chip in everybody's head, which I hope never happens, is to ask them in ways that make sense and are without bias. Good, old-fashioned, unbiased survey design. I'll get back to that. And then finally, got to have a SaaS platform. And the last point. If this tree falls in a forest, right, and nobody's around to do something about it, to hear it, so to speak, right, you don't make any money. You can have the answers coming out of the system, but unless you activate these answers and have an organization set up to do that in a process, it doesn't matter. Increasingly, marketing evolution is finding that a lot of our outbound, a lot of our development work is linking in APIs to, so-called demand-side platforms, trade desks, working closely with the agencies on being able to do the buys rather quick, more quickly. So speed and execution and activation matters. Last point about this, about the industry, is that you often hear, if you read some of the pundit reviews about bottom up versus top down, it's a misnomer. There's no such thing. Okay. There's really only detail and then pull up to a level of optimization. Let me explain what I mean. If you look at the time series mixed models, a typical output of a mixed model kind of looks like this. And people run around for a whole year or 6 months and say, digital, or whatever, digital always works lately. Network TV isn't working as well versus radio, or radio isn't working, and they run around in organizations, we find, say, with these truisms, right, that is not necessarily true, right? What's true is the other direction. Is that when you put a particular ad for one of our customers, say on the Discovery Channel versus ESPN, there is a person level mix and a response mix of a particular ad. This is very abstract, but picture 3 ads. That the output we're giving to marketers is how their ads are working, 2 segments in channels, and a mix shift there. which means that when you roll that up, it will give you the channel mix, which means that when you roll that up, it will give you this. But I can affect this if way down here, I have better creative in a particular channel, or I get a cost advantage for a particular channel. If I get a great deal on CPM and change it here, zoom, it rolls all the way up. So the world is going to have to get used to much more of a dynamic view of what's working and where, right? That this sort of one chart that runs around the organization of radio doesn't work or print doesn't work is not true. What it is one historical view of what it might be. You can change that as you go. So top down, bottom up. That was the number, sorry for the salesy, because everybody's finding this though. That was the number of return for Marketing Evolution on fees in 2016 to our customers. How do we find it? I'll go through each of these. Where's the money? So when somebody says to you, why are you doing this at all? The first one is an obvious one, right? That on a cost basis, having that right channel mix that I just showed you. Second one, the right detail, down to the site level, to the time of day level, to the insertion level in print. Our software has tens of thousands of these variables that then rolled up for decisioning, right? And as I said before, go back with me to the segmentation analogy. The right detail allows you to untangle that response to the right person. I respond differently than all of you respond, right? The segments I represent, therefore, have different response functions, whether they're low-level DMP segments or high-level proprietary segments that the marketer is using. The right repetition. We call these frequency to lift response functions. What comes out of our logit models, which is what we use for our optimization, are these log linear forms. Oh, John, what does that mean? Well, what it means is that what you get is a differential response by frequency for each segment, media, creative. Why is that important? Because if like you're native advertising, which only needs a couple of exposures of social, you rock and roll fast and top off quickly. If you're TV, you tend to have a slower build. And all kinds of different things in between. Neither of the two things are bad, but they can be utilized in certain ways given the budget that you offer to a particular campaign or not, and move money up or down, right? Or where you want to put your money. Because what these optimization engines do is they take a look at curves like that and they throw the next dollar at it, right? Of where, sorry for calculus class, but a place where that first derivative, that slope is max. That's what they do. It's really what we're doing here. This is known in digital as frequency capping, right? I was watching the Bostonian. I was watching the Celtics last night online, right? Because I can do it like that. And so the online digital video advertising, I thought about it for today, and kept on doing the same McDonald's ad over and over and over again. I was screaming at my computer. I was saying to my computer, I was saying, stop this ad, right? Stop it. Stop. And what I was saying was, guys, you're way out here already. Stop. Our system, when systems like this, brings that frequency to response information out. Huge amount of money in crafting this guy.
For the avoidance of duplication, you doing that on per person level across all the media, or is it on a per media, this specific site or the specific network?
Duplication is a long conversation. I believe that the cross-channel duplication problem was not solved. I believe we have solved it with tried and true techniques. I have a duplication guide here. I read the book years ago of the response functions. So the answer is we dedupe in our system, all right? And I can get you more stuff about that. Cross-channel duplication was really hard. Within channel was relatively easy. I mean, the things companies like MRI, et cetera, in print, classic techniques solved duplication a long time ago in very good ways. And we use those techniques to sort of scale them up. Very important. Because before that, when we were working with this 5 years ago, dropped off.
Sorry, everyone.
When we were mucking with this 5 years ago,
Welcome to.
before we had duplication help, we would get crazy reaches.
You are now being placed in the meeting.
So very, very important.
Recording.
Not that it's not relevant today, but people kind of just blast by that because duplication is like another form of frequency, right? That's really what you're talking about. It really is, you know. And so, so very important. Should I keep going or just kind of hold up?
Hold up for a minute,
Okay.
John. I just want to double sure that everyone online is still online.
Yep, we're here, Jasper.
You still there? Okay, perfect. All right, go for it, John. Thanks, Seeker.
And then the other place you're finding money again is in this. Our software puts as an output to be reviewed weekly a variety of segments. It could be Prism segments, you know, different lifestyle segments. We have Tapestry come out of our system just out of the box. It could be a DMP segment, it could be Excelate segments. It could be just kind of viable, good old-fashioned viable demos, right? And then what ads and what is working against those segments. So when a marketer interacts these attribution optimization systems to talk to their agency, they're kind of talking about, well, for this particular segment, let's say that males were very important in the campaign. That's a trite example, but I'll use it. None of our creative is working. I mean, I've seen interactions in quasi real time of saying, we got to go back to the well and work it again. Or one large beverage drinker who had a single TV ad for a large still iced tea campaign. Looked at it and said, wow, this works so well against 3 of the segments that we wanted and didn't work at all against 2 others. Right? This has forced conversations around production costs, how many versions of creative we have, is it worth it or not against what you could find in upside? It's a very interesting conversation because the optimization changes now, right? It broadens.
Do you take into account pre-copy testing and pre-creative testing?
So we have attached copy tests to the eventual impact downstream. This is impact, is moving of KPI, right? We're an analytics company, right? We're really good at saying that worked. And then, like anybody else would, you get to the why behind the buy. You look at the ad and you say, well, that kind of makes sense. But we, Marketing Evolution, is not in the business of kind of putting a taxonomy of how somebody feels and thinks about an ad, whether it'll work or not in the marketplace. For people who are using pre-testing, right, we've tried to get with those companies and kind of do an earlier signal of what things in this are really working downstream or not. That's a future and an important one. But you can also imagine, because a lot of it is survey-based as well, you can attach this data, right? There's a unique ID there. You can really do it with lookalike models do it as well to get an early warning indicator. We've tried it a few times, kind of beta it, right? Because you're right. Companies get to exactly where you were, which is if I know before I start, or at least have good signals that make it better than a coin toss, then that's important to me, in a correlated way. It's especially important for short campaigns. Warner Brothers won an ARF Gold Medalist Award last year for some of the work that we were pleased to work with them on, so I'll mention them. Warner has 6-week campaigns to get people in seats in movies, right? So for them, this issue, getting as many early warning indicators and audience sort of identifiers is really important. Yeah. And then finally, people who are familiar with mixed models who kind of know ad stock variables, right? You kind of smooth exponentially what works into the future. Go with me on that analogy. In person-level data, you have the same sort of thing because we are getting this data kind of weekly, right? And we know, long story short, about decay. Like DRTV, decays slower generally than regular TV. We know that, and things like that. This matters, okay? So flighting, which is derived from decay, can come out of these systems as well. And you can find money in sort of tuning flighting. You pick up your marketing book, your marketing models book, mine I did the other day from the mid-1990s about the advertising chapter, where they're going over flighting and decay. That was the pitch in an academic book. It's really about either pulsing or blitzing. It's really about how long this junk lasts, right? Excuse me for junk, but how long it lasts in the marketplace. And so that all comes out, and then finally real time as well. So that money is why that 24-to-1. And this is on top of mixed models. Do the mixed models, do it for finance, etc. But optimization and attribution have shifted to tactical systems that the agencies, vendors, marketers need to set up for that world. How does this work? What we're doing is putting together big census level data, person level data sets. This is a cartoon. Let me go to some. Oh, can't read these things too well. So we have tens of thousands of humans for individual customers, right? Coming off of their log files, coming out of their CRM system. We are really an integration engine. If you look at what this industry is hiring right now, it's really like everybody else is hiring data engineers. It's really a big data problem. So we'll take an offline from systems like MediaOcean, from ad servers like Google's DoubleClick Campaign Manager, et cetera. Bring in those exposures. Bring in those exposures. We are also doing, and I would respectfully submit that asking people questions is not dead. Okay. To get brand conversion information, on an attitudinal, I'll give you an example. One of our customers is a used car listing service online. Their key KPI is unique visitors. Their other KPI is awareness. They're fighting two large competitors entering the market. They try to balance those two things in their media optimization. The only way you're going to get awareness is to ask you, right? Is to ask you. So that those old-fashioned opportunity to see things and the use of survey, et cetera, is still, we would contend, important to integrate in the data set. CRM information, or if you're separated by channel as a marketer, third-party sources are becoming more and more available. In auto, Polka or JD Power's information, in pharma, IMS or Crossix information, in CPG, Kantar Shopcom information, et cetera. All those things are things we integrate in of whether somebody bought or not, as well. DMP segmentation, we build quite a bit on top of the DMP segmentations. Search and social, working with these guys is beginning to be quite successful. They come towards the world, Facebook, and both organic and paid search. And then finally, where somebody is and what they're exposed to. What was it? Really, go ahead.
Two questions on the last slide. So you've been talking about getting much more personalized and really going down to the personal level. How do you measure brand perceptions when you've got very specific segments, for example, millennial Asian dads, where it starts to get really expensive to find a high enough sample size to measure?
Yeah. So two things. One is just good old fashioned. We don't own panel. We aggregate panel. So like when we're looking for a plaque psoriasis sufferer, which is 2%, moderate to severe, 2% of the population, we can hone in on that. But even below that, you're quite right? You can't. So there's two things. We have done lookalike models of what they, kind of a fusion technique of what they would have answered. To broaden out the data and do that. And we also will take these response functions inside a segment, and we'll keep the impact there and assume the impact, but adjust the incidence for media channel that adjusts that. Okay, so it's sort of a triangulation right now because you're right, down here in the lower quadrant to find, left-handed widget turners, et cetera, is still on a survey basis difficult. Lookalike models one way, sort of assuming the impact across something that's demographic and deep enough, and then adjusting for incidence in the channel. Yeah.
And then the second question was on geolocation. You're doing that through, it says proprietary, but you're doing that through kind of third parties that provide that data?
Yeah. So, I mean, these just coming to mind. I'm not trying to do a pitch, but something like a Place IQ.
Yeah. And what level of accuracy have you found?
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, you get the wrong guy in the room. I can talk about match rates, like a live ramp, et cetera, of if somebody's really there or not. Stay tuned, because I have some this publicly available Walmart information. I use some MMA stuff. I hope the ARF doesn't mind here to show some Walmart curves. And I can show you that at least with that information, you can get to differentiation and response. All right, so I can't answer the question on accuracy, on validation, of whether somebody really walked in a store or not, other than believe them, right?
Yeah, just curious if you match it against, client CRMs that, that know that John Doe lives here. Does the place? There
is so much happening here, right? I mean, so the other things are that we're working with a lot of retailers now. The pickup and passionate retailers have been amazing. So when you walk in, they've got technologies that, when you're walking in the door, right, through these guys, et cetera, and we're integrating that data. So that space is moving about as fast as any space I see right now around location services. And it's really fascinating. We had to do this all ourselves until the advent of the safe harbors, like a live ramp, okay? And they're not the only one. I mean, Newstar, Experian, et cetera, are developing these businesses. Axiom owned LiveRamp. What's so great about that is that we can move much faster, right? Many of our customers are spun up on a LiveRamp solution, and we're building an intelligence layer on top of that, and it gets anonymized, right? So Oliver, we know you might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we don't want your phone number and we don't want your email, right? We just want to know its consistency of exposure across and your segment representation across you. And that allows us to work fast and without PII. And so I'm not pitching LiveRamp here, but to say there's other services out there as well. But this also, for all of you out there thinking about this really increased speed, right? And when we first started talking about this a few years ago, when we became a LiveRamp partner distributor, the first attribution model to do that, sorry for the sales pitch, the world was like, but now we see a lot of our customers all spun up. They're all dressed up with nowhere to go on data, which is really cool, right? And we put this intelligence layer on top of it. And so this is really, I know it doesn't work this way. I know data structures don't work this way. But really, conceptually, what it is it's really a graph schema. But what it is a large respondent level data set where we are coding up over a time period frequencies, exposures in media to different people. And okay, so then you have to pick a technique, right? And this is where tried and true comes back in. What are we doing? We're doing conversions here. We're doing conversion logic. I wasn't aware, and now I am. I didn't come to the website, and now I did, right? Ones or zeros. What's good for ones and zeros when you're modeling to them is probabilistic regression, probit and logit. We use logit models. So what comes out of those logit models, and they're all use R and Python to do this, and you will get later in the semester there'll be all these viewability issues and all this stuff. But what it does is a really nice output of a fitted curve of these response functions, essentially. Okay, this is how the guts of it work. And so once you have that, right, once you've got exposures and a whole bunch of information on profile information and everything else about people against those people and those profile variables, you can take that frequency of exposure coming out of the models and scaling it up by reach frequency, you can start to get these things. Okay, so this is, let me give you some examples of why this is so important to untangle this stuff in attribution. So this is a public case from Walmart about the back to school campaign. And we did it for the Mobile Marketing Association because the Mobile Marketing Association worldwide was saying, what should be mobile's fair share in the next buy format, right? And so there's a lot of different formats, right, in mobile. Mobile's just a channel. It's not a creative, right? It is contextual more than if you're walking around. It's very personal. And so what was required was a system like this to be able to take that new media and throw it in, so to speak, to say, what would it take and from where, and what should we spend on it? Look at this. The back to school campaign for Walmart had the same video across cable, broadcast, and mobile video. By the way, video on digital worked very well. I mean, we're just saying. Mobile video outperformed on impact these guys. Now you have to adjust these for costs and reach, etc. That doesn't mean you always will use mobile. Mobile sometimes doesn't get to certain markets, etc. All right, and on a cost basis, right? Certain things in mobile don't cost a lot on a CPM basis. We'll add those in. But this is a starting point. To be able to see this and say, I ran the same thing here, TV, and as I walked through my living room, and we did desktop too, and they have different responses. Similarly, back to this proximity thing, Walmart's a retailer, right? And for conquest sales, if somebody's parked in a Target, or whether or not they are going by a Walmart or near it, matters, right? So we also would find in this work, we find this typically with our customers, I'm kind of trying to bring it home, is that in proximity, we just say, hey, no retargeting, this is display ad. Somebody shopped at Walmart before, which is like everybody, but shopped in a category, this was for grocery, right? It gets better for retargeting if they come to the site. But what gets better still, and this is why we think, what gets better still is when we take, for example, Place IQ information, et cetera, into the model and see where they were when they consumed the ad. Well, of course, right? That green starts to display. This is important because it allows you to empirically say how much, right? How much more? To whom? Right? Not just more. And so, yeah, so it proves a hypothesis, but also gives you an empiricism around it to plan around it. Other things too. They had questions around whether or not these great things that appear in your phone were better than these little things on the bottom, pencil units per sip. Well, yeah, you'd think, of course, but we knew exactly how much, and also the frequency capping that we would do. It rises quicker, faster, etc. All right, to understand that. Out of this, you get spend impact response functions, and it goes into the optimization. I'm going to go by this guy and not tell his story. That's the CEO of Marketing Evolution. But to tell you that we're doing this in a variety of venues, I'll do it quickly. How we're doing this, looking for Rex, man. Rex, my boss, CEO, he lives right here. Look at where his phone is mostly. So and that matters, right, for what ads he's seeing and what he's consuming. If you were in LA, that's him, right, lighting up in LA. And those are the billboards in LA. I mean, we know from TAB and the Outdoor Association of Advertising, where every billboard is in the country and what's playing on it right now. We have in our data sets.
I thought for one horrifying second you were going to say that was just a meeting schedule.
What?
I thought for one second you were going to say that those were his meetings last week in LA.
And also that we put in the tapestry segmentation, et cetera, just to kind of bring this alive. What that means is like somebody from Warner, which I pulled from because they are an ARF gold medalist winner. What they're doing is they're understanding in campaign. We will sit with them and say, hey, this is how you're doing. This is what you could do if you made the changes we're going to suggest. You want to do them or not? And this is how it lays down the segments. And this is how it lays down in detailed site level and channel level mix shifts. To go in a little bit deeper, you can't see these things. I made it that way to protect Warner in certain ways. But what that is the key output that new attribution and new optimization does as a tactical system. This is for the movie Creed. And Creed had 10 trailers, 10 commercials, right? If I showed you some of these commercials, you'd say, okay, like Become, when I remember, and other ones, you'd say, all right, I understand when I see Destiny, which is here, versus Become, what's operating across different segments, right? And then they act on these. 2 weeks into, not months, not historical view, 2 weeks into a 6-week cycle, where we're sitting with somebody in an entertainment customer and saying, shift. This is working, this isn't working, okay? Because they have 4 weeks to go before premiere.
What's the judgment on effectiveness of ticket sales?
So this is intent because it's a leading indicator, right? Which we know we've linked empirically to outcome. Often when people are in lead, so this is an important point. A lot of either fast cycle or highly considered good marketplaces that have long purchase cycles, like auto or financial services, like an asset manager. To do a tactical system, you need to know a leading indicator that predicts where somebody is going to go, right? Because you're like for auto, you're talking about 6-month intenders, right? You don't know what they're going to do. So what we do is when we work with a customer, we will go backwards after we do those campaigns and attach to what actually happened, do an empirical model of correlation, and then use that to calculate the ROI going forward when we're seeing the intent movements going forward. Okay, so here it was intent to go to the movie, and we've done that with Warner.
How did you capture intent?
Is it capturing?
How is it captured? The intent.
The intent? Survey. Yeah, anything attitudinal is coming out in a survey. And so, these are coming alive. You've got the frequency of the lift response function, so-called FLIRFs. This guy down here, this commercial, which is one of them, somebody would look at this, like let's say we're doing ad testing, right? Pre-test. You say, this thing's a loser, right? Maybe it's not on impact. This looks like a loser in aggregate, but this commercial down here has segments that it's working with. And there are real conversations, in rooms about, are those big enough? Are they important enough? Do we keep it around? Do we kill it? So this untangling, this segmentation of the marketplace, as I was saying before, is key. Okay. Need software? So going through, so standing up a system like this, what would it take? Okay, so I won't tell you now. A lot of what marketing evolution and our other colleagues in this industry, competitive or not, do in this industry is increasingly extract, transform, and load ETL processes around exposure information comes from multiple systems and putting together a unified customer data set. We're getting faster and faster with that. Read off of DCM systems, weekly, right, et cetera. Everybody will have something that is either like a fractional attribution, it might be some regression model, et cetera, something that is under the hood of assessing response function. So when you're when you're buying this stuff or thinking about it, think about that as well, and accuracy of data sources. Everybody is, you should have good, usable visualization software, right, that allows you to access these answers, both at this, kind of executive level or the marketer level, but also at the agency level on planning tools, right, to be able to use this at a deep planning level, whether that agency is internal or external or multiple agencies or not. And then finally, as I said, and increasingly, the connections with activation engines. Like, for example, we started working with one insurance company because the digital video partner of ours, Tube Mobile, right, wanted to assess how they were doing, but really how it developed and what we're doing now is sending them answers to act on, right, in campaign. It looks like this. So what I said before is this is our technology stack. And think of attribution vendors as really an intelligence layer on top of developing data sets, right? Before they were cobbling, these attribution players were cobbling their data sets together. Increasingly, there's an infrastructure here, right? And that intelligence engine is really to do something with the data, to make it work and to act on it, right? And that's what we and others in our industry are building and have built. And those layers are, again, same thing, the data feeds, importing them in a way that makes sense, the analytics on top of it, the software, and then acting on it. And your software outcomes kind of look like this. These are screenshots that for Spanish language network non-prime, that optimize costs versus the current cost, meaning you should put more money into it. And the creative rotation, again, these are the same ads for Warner, Destiny, etc. within that channel. Those are the answers that should be coming out of an attribution system today to work with your agencies. And so, and then we rinse and repeat. What happens at the end of different campaigns is that these systems are used to plan the next campaigns. And keep on going. All right. I'll end this way. 3 minutes to go, and then we can ask questions. So when I used to do time series mix modeling, we get a few smart modeling people together. And we would run around the organization and gather data in either in different filing cabinets, et cetera. And this has been more automated now. And then a few months later, we get a preliminary answer, and we kind of land 6 months out. For a tactical system, that's not okay, right? And so what you should expect is when you deploy one of these systems, is a period of about 30 days or so where you're saying what's the definition of success and what are the key KPIs, what are the data feeds that we're going to do and how do you stand them up, and then be in on the configuration of some of the software and how you're going to decision around it. 60 days in, you'll be getting your first answers, which is very, very different from what the world was used to, 5 or 6 years ago. And then it's a continuous system. These aren't projects. You don't engage the attribution industry or the optimization industry, I would contend, anymore on, can you do a project for us? They should say, initially, maybe as a pilot, but in the contract will be, you're going to go to continuous. Because you can't, new media is coming out, consumer response changes, there are products change that you introduce, et cetera. This is a continuous system. You're standing up a continuous software system that that the organization and your stakeholders will be using. And to be able to decision, or at least see what's going on at least weekly. To be able to at least monthly say what changes we're going to make. We're collapsing this all the time. CMOs, VPs of marketing, et cetera, will expect and want some summary about what's working and what's not and how we do it, right? Quarterly and beyond. What that requires and what we're seeing is really a sea change in how organizations work. One of the things that we should have anticipated in this industry, and we're seeing a lot now, is really readiness for change and change management around how people are working. I mean, by analogy, we have an industry, no fault of its own, mostly data, right, that's used to a little bit of set it and forget it, right? Whereas this can be managed in flow, requires different decisioning processes, who's going to be responsible, who's going to be involved, Do I get to make a change or not? Who gives the marching orders to an agency? Does the agency do that, et cetera? A lot of finding this money of all those things I was going through before, everything from media detail down to flighting, is really about finding it. It's really about acting on it. And acting on it is not just a system, but also a set of people processes. So I think that what we have seen, and I'll leave you with, is that we will respectfully sometimes decline to work with some of our customers and say to them, I think we can help you with readiness, but if you're not ready, you're not ready, right? And readiness means things like agency relationship, all right? I'll say it this way, are you beating them down on fees, or are you really in it for accountability, right? I mean, are your incentives completely aligned? Sometimes they're not. Because people who are in the know at a detail level have to act on these and feel confident in them, right? Does your agency management groups really work together? Do you have a siloed digital department that doesn't talk to traditional? Or somebody at least over that to understand full exposure and full media allocation? Customer data and intelligence. I walked into one unnamed DMP about 5 years ago and said, who wants the data? They said, we do. Look, marketers do. Marketers need data, okay? And the customer data and intelligence, if you don't have control over it, right, then you're not ready. As a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I never came one, right? So same thing. Everybody says, yeah, I want to be really fast and agile. Who wouldn't want to say that? But are you really ready for it? Do you have the organizational processes in place? Can we help you with those to be able to read out of the system and move on these answers? If you're not, don't do it. Get those set up first, or at least do it in parallel. Mercifully, there's a generation of leadership that's very comfortable with analytics, okay, and software decisioning and decision support systems. And I can say that, over the past decade or so, I've seen a huge change in the leadership and marketing worldwide on being able to embrace analytic engines and act on those answers. Some organizations aren't ready for software decisioning, and its cousin, an empirically driven C-suite. If you're getting shoulder shrugs by the CFO or the CMO, probably not ready. Right? Probably not ready. And then, as a marketer or as an agency or even as a vendor, do you embrace test and learn? These systems really are test and learn systems. You're throwing new stimuli into the marketplace. You're reading it out, right? And you're reacting and responding to it. And some of those things are going to fail, right? Or at least need to be adjusted. So, do you have a culture where you can fail forward? Where a defect is a treasure, not a finger pointing thing. So I promised that I would spend 4 minutes over. But
I think we started late. I think you're in closer.
Okay,
It's good. We have time for questions. This is great.
And so that's attribution, and that's optimization. That's where we are. Any questions? Any on the phone or in? Okay.
So, John, it's Chris. I'm curious, when we talk about attribution, and we've been talking a lot about the plumbing of programmatic, how do you sync those up? Because so much of that programmatic buying happens in real time. Do you think, are we at the point now where attribution is ready to evaluate and make decisions on that same real-time basis as programmatic buying is taking place, or what else do we need in order to get to that point?
So the answer, Chris, is yes. So we're working with customers. I don't think they would mind me saying it, with Mobile, for instance, and other DSPs, where a lot of their interest was initially show that programmatic works. And you know what? So first of all, step back from programmatic. Programmatic as a pricing system is different from programmatic as a really rapid buying system against audiences. And finally, is different from the impact of programmatic, which is the most important thing to us. Programmatic is good generally because they're doing as micro audience targeting as possible, right? And so if you're thinking about impact at viable audiences that are as reasonably thin as possible, that's goodness. So we've always been measuring, right? Every one of our customers has programmatic line items in these systems right now. The thing is, what we obviously we're not a DSP, and what we link to is wherever you take the answer from there, so to speak, whether it's real-time bidding and pricing, or it's really sort of like really fast. And I know there's a lot of issues in programmatic around who stands in line first, all the different bidding systems. That engine is the domain of the DSPs, right? What we're saying is, where did the ad land, what landed, and we're going to assess impact for you, so that they can use that information that comes out of the system to be able to place ads against that buying system, against that pricing system, and that rapid buying system. So the two things are completely consistent. They're completely consistent. Programmatic is a fast-priced channel. That might be it. People have heard of
All right. John, that was great. Thank you so much. Cheers.